We are 3 weeks away from the NFL trade deadline, so I thought that we could go over just some classic trade deadline controversies in the weeks to come. And today we're going to start off with the 2017 Browns fiasco, potential scandal. We'll get into it. And let me know in the comments which trade deadline stories you'd like me to tell next. But now, let's go back to 2017. And I'm so sorry to bring this up, Browns fans. I'm sorry to bring up the whole story. But in 2017, going up to the trade deadline, the Browns are 0-8 on their season. Not a single win. Their starting quarterback is Deshaun Kaiser, a rookie who ended up having a short NFL season, I think 4 seasons, but he was in and out and kind of was present during 2 seasons. He was a 2nd round pick for the Browns, coming out of Notre Dame, and at that point in the season, he had been benched multiple times. He threw picks like he was in the business of throwing picks. In week 7, they pulled him after he threw back-to-back interceptions, and he would finish 2017 with an NFL rookie record of 28 turnovers on the season, and this was in a 16-game season. But to be fair to Kaiser, it wasn't just a quarterback problem at the Browns. Their receivers were a mess. Their 2016 first round pick, Corey Coleman, he broke his hand in week 2 and went to IR. And then they had the veteran Kenny Britt. He also had a couple of injuries that season, and he was apparently a bit of a diva. He was probably didn't want to be in Cleveland. I can't imagine many players did on 0-8, but he was behaving in an unbecoming manner. They also, that season, lost their offensive line cornerstone when Joe Thomas tore his triceps in week 7. And you might remember Myles Garrett was the number 1 overall pick that year, and he missed the first 4 games of the season with a high ankle sprain. And then he later entered a concussion protocol the week of the London game. Now, that London game was the 8th game of the season for the Browns. It was the last game that they played before the trade deadline. The trade deadline was October 31st in 2017. And in London, the Browns went down 33-16 to Minnesota. And like I said, they go 0-8 on the season, going into both the trade deadline and their bye week. And the Browns head coach in 27 is Hugh Jackson. And after that London game, he says, I think everything has got to be perfect for us to have a chance to win a football game. We try to get everything right, but we all know that's not how football is played. You can't be perfect. Which is, partly a deflection, but partly saying we need to cut out variance in our football. We need to be more reliable. We need to get the basics of football down. We're not trying to have a blowout. We're just trying to finish a game without making mistakes. So when your team is panicking and there's problems everywhere, what's the best way to do that? What's the best way to become a reliable team? And with margins that thin, potentially the quickest way to cut variance is with a stabilizing quarterback, right? Like a low variance, system familiar veteran who protects the ball, gets you in and out of plays, and lets the run game, keeps it in the running, so to speak. Basically, they needed to kill the giveaways and the chaos. And, they had a lot of problems, but turnovers at that point with their rookie QB was their biggest drag. So, this trade deadline might be their saving grace. And Hugh Jackson's target is A.J. McCarron. Jackson had coached him in Cincinnati, and so he thought, we can slot him into the roster real quick. He knows my playbook. McCarron had already run Jackson's offense. Now at the time, McCarron was with the Bengals. He was a backup to Andy Dalton throughout 2017, and leading up to the trade deadline, he had no meaningful snaps, really. Jumping ahead, his 2017 season ended with just 14 attempts for 66 yards. But his resume, especially compared to the rookie Kaiser, could be an easy enough sell to the Browns locker room. In 2015, which was still recent memory, in 2017, he started down the stretch when Dalton had a thumb injury, and he went for 850 some yards, 6 touchdowns, and he started a pretty tight wild card loss versus Pittsburgh, in which he threw for over 200 yards. And on the Bengals side, they weren't necessarily shopping McCarron, but they were listening, especially considering that little side scandal here. Little side scandal, tangent. McCarron. Sorry, allergies. McCarron had a pending service time grievance, which he filed under the NFL, NFLPA, CBA grievance process, where he basically argued that Cincinnati kept him on the non-football injury list improperly as a rookie in 2014, and they should have activated him during camp. They basically redshirted him when they shouldn't have, which would have given him an accrued season toward free agency. So basically, if McCarron lost this arbitration, this grievance, he would be a restricted free agent in 2018. So Cincinnati would still retain some control over him. However, if McCarron won the arbitration, he would be an unrestricted free agent in 2018. So he'd be free to sign anywhere, and the Bengals would get no direct compensation. So with that looming over Cincinnati, they could reasonably be trying to get compensation over him now, right? If you're watching this and you're more of a soccer fan, it's basically like trying to sell a player before his contract runs out, rather than waiting a half a season for his contract to run out and then he goes away on a free. So the deal seems obvious on both sides. And on deadline day, like I said, October 31st, Halloween in 2017, the deadline is at 4 p.m. And by all reports, at 3:55 p.m., the teams reach an agreement. Cleveland will send their 2018 second and third round picks to Cincinnati in exchange for A.J. McCarron. Now, a trade isn't done. It's not official until both clubs submit executed terms to the NFL office, and that, again, has to be done by 4 p.m. And that's what the Bengals did. They submitted their paperwork to the league. They figure the deal is done. The Browns, however, they did not. The Browns emailed Cincinnati, but not the league. And ESPN's minute-by-minute report from that day says that the Bengals sent their half, even had a league official on the phone during those 5 minutes. Meanwhile, like I said, the Browns emailed their paperwork to the Bengals, but they did not copy the NFL, so the league never received Cleveland's documents. And at 4 p.m., both teams realized that the Browns had not filed with the league. Now, the Browns argued that it was close. Apparently, they did catch it, and they sent in the paperwork moments, they say, after 4 p.m. They asked for a grace period. They appealed to the league, but the NFL said the deadline is 4 p.m. We have no flexibility on this. The trade is not approved. So in the days that followed the trade deadline, CBS Sports reported that Some coaches on the Brown side believed that Sashi Brown, their executive vice president, had no intention of completing the trade, that it was all talk, and he was sabotaging the team, the trade, to make sure it wasn't going through. Because, to be fair, the Browns, they knew NFL trade mechanics very well. Their front office had Chris Cooper, who had deep experience in the league office. So it was an odd look that they would make such a big mistake at the deadline. They would have known to file with the league before 4. And there's a couple of reasons that someone in the office, namely Sashi Brown, might try to sabotage the deal. For one, when you're looking at price versus value, they agreed to a hefty price. I mean, the 2018 second and third rounders for a number 2 quarterback. And don't forget McCarron's grievance that if he won, would make him an unrestricted free agent in 2018, meaning Cleveland would have paid 2 premium picks, day 2 picks, for an 8-game rental, essentially. Speaking of reasons to sabotage, you can also look at the rebuild timeline versus a short-term band-aid. So the time the Browns program emphasized picks and long-term roster building under Sashi Brown, which clashes with the idea of spending these 2 draft picks for a mid-season stabilizer for an 0-8 team. Under Sashi Brown, the Browns were really trying to stockpile draft capital, look to the future, and not burn it to chase down what was essentially a lost season. I mean, you're on 0-8. Sure, people are trying to save their jobs, but what is there to gain other than people like Sashi Brown trying to save their own job, which again wouldn't benefit him. So we're looking at the other side of the coin now, reasons it wouldn't make sense for Sashi Brown to sabotage the trade. He would have needed to protect his own job by winning some games for the rest of the season, for the second half of the season. So to that point, Sashi Brown came out in the press and said that the sabotage idea was wholly untrue. He said that Hugh Jackson, the head coach, was in the room when they were trying to finish the deal, so the head coach could verify that they were really trying to get it done. And eventually, I'll jump ahead, Sashi Brown did get fired after that season. So there's no trade. McCarron remains a Bengal for the rest of 2017, and the Browns finish 0-16. They don't win a single game that season, and they were only the second team ever to finish winless over a 16-game season after the 2008 sorry, Lions fans, you just caught a stray. And since then, the NFL has moved to a 17-game model after the pandemic, and no team yet has gone 0-17, although the Jets might be knocking at that door now. By the way, McCarron ended up winning his grievance, and so he became an unrestricted free agent in 2018, went on to sign with the Bills on a 2-year deal. The Browns, they drafted Baker Mayfield, number 1 overall, on April 26, 2018. And that is the story of the Browns' deadline day fiasco. Let me know in the comments which trades you're hoping to see your team make ahead of this year's deadline, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.